This program was designed for operators of the C2 Thomas chassis to give them information on the dash and different information that is available to them. We're going to start with the fault codes, or using the dash for diagnostics. The dash is a way in which the vehicle is able to instruct the driver or operator as to what is going on correctly and incorrectly. For this to work, the park brake first must be set. You would then turn the key to the on position, and noting the area in the center of the dash, any faults that may occur will show. Now, if the odometer reading shows, rather than this, there are no codes to read. Call transportation with any information you have about dash codes. If the dash codes are present, you will also find a light typically on the dash. 3 on the left are the check, stop, and it's what looks like a silhouette of an engine. They're called the MIL lamp. And to the right there are several other lamps that look like an exhaust plume. You may also find additional indicators across the top, similar to this green display, which is another sign that the dash is trying to give information to the operator. We're going to start with the check and stop engine lights. These are the two oldest lights that are on the dash. They have been there since the mid-80s, and they pertain to engine possible problems. There are two lamps, the amber warning lamp or check engine light, which is yellow, or red stop lamp, which is red. If the amber light comes on, that's an indication of a fault in the engine, not a failure. The engine is completely operational, and we could continue to use it as necessary. However, if there is a drop in horsepower simultaneous with the yellow lamp, it indicates that we do have a problem. Some engines actually have several thresholds for low oil pressure and coolant temperature, and at a lower pressure may turn on a check engine light rather than a red stop engine lamp. Various emission codes, which are all EPA requirements, will also turn on the check engine light and give us a derate and power. In all cases, you want to call transportation to find if they wish you to continue to use the vehicle or not. Now, if both the red and the yellow lamps are illuminated, there will be a definite derate in power, and you have a very bad situation. You could have very high engine coolant, very low oil pressure, a low coolant level, or various emission-related codes which the government feels are worthy of an immediate response. That response should be to stop the engine and call transportation. Luckily, this is not a normal occurrence. Today's engines are extremely reliable, and we typically do not see this situation occur very often at all. Any Allison-equipped school bus since 2009 has also been provided with a system called prognostics. That could be identified by the presence of either of the two lamps on the right side. With a 2000 series transmission, the one that has a stick shift or a shifting mechanism, you would see a green lamp with a gear and a wrench in it. If you have the 3000 series Allison transmission, it has an electronic shift pad between the two range indications, the N and N. In this particular example, a small wrench will show, providing that the system is active. Now, prognostics is similar to the get oil change soon lamp that you see on an automotive situation, but much more sophisticated. It also comes on a little differently. For example, if the lamp illuminates for 2 minutes steadily, for 2 minutes after the drive is first selected, it's an indication that the oil life is due, has reached its limits, and we need to have the oil changed on the transmission. If the lamp flashes for 2 minutes after drive is selected, it's an indicator that the transmission oil filter needs to be changed. The other situation you might see is where the lamp is illuminated all time, And that basically is telling you the transmission is in dire need of assistance. The situation with this is a little different than the other lamps we've discussed, in that in the other cases, those lamps will typically come on and stay on. So you know very well that the transportation should be advised of this. In this case, however, the light comes on just for the first 2 minutes in most cases and then goes out. This may indicate to you that the problem no longer exists. However, it does. You want to advise transportation that this light has come on. Engine brake switch. Dependent upon the engine that the vehicle is supplied with, the switch will look different. But the system works exactly the same with either the Mercedes or Cummins product. This is a system designed to slow the vehicle without complete use of the wheel brakes. In the past, there has been a lot of concern about engine brakes since they slow only the rear axle, in that it may cause the vehicle to lose control on a slippery road surface. This was rectified a good number of years ago when ABS became functional on these vehicles. The ABS system monitors the wheel speed at all 4 points, and if there's any misalignment of speed, it automatically disengages any engine braking systems. This is completely controlled by the ABS. This makes this an extremely safe system. This provides many safety benefits, including cooler brakes, possible shorter stopping distances, certainly more controlled stopping distances, and if necessary, it can be turned off. But our recommendations from the factory is that we leave the engine brake on at all times. This is a switch you might find on some of the older units that were equipped with the Mercedes engine after 2007. It was a switch which enabled the engine to produce additional heat while parked. Now, idling is not recommended in any case in any vehicles. However, there are situations where we do recommend it, and that would be, for example, waiting for a sports team, giving the vehicle some temperature so that the team could come on board and warm up. When this switch is activated, it's thermostatically controlled by the engine temperature. It would come on automatically when the vehicle temperature reaches 153 degrees. It would raise the engine speed, go through some different injection modes and modulation, and it does allow the engine to produce additional heat. This shuts off automatically at 158 degrees, returning the engine back to a normal idle. Again, you'd only find this in some of the older units from 2007 through 2010 that were equipped with the Mercedes engine. Light test switch. This switch is grossly misunderstood. For to use it, you must set the parking brakes. You must then activate it by momentarily pushing the switch. To cancel it, you would hit the service brakes or the parking brake or hit some other function, and it would automatically turn it off. This causes all the lights in a vehicle to flash. And it's used not as a pre-trip, but to test the bulbs to see that the bulbs are active. The important point to keep in mind here, this is not a normal activation of the switches. For example, if you have a defective brake switch, the brake lights won't come on when you hit the brake pedal, but they would come on the test light. This is designed for technicians to review the lights quickly to see if there is a bulb which is not operational, not as a pre-trip. We're going to discuss emissions for a few moments. In 2007, the federal government requirements were that we add a after-treatment device to the exhaust system to trap any particulate material that normally would leave the exhaust pipe. This filter traps the black sooty material produced by the combustion process and would fill rather quickly if it were not for the oxidation catalyst. The catalyst creates heat, and in doing so burns this residual material to a fine white ash. And this filter technically is large enough to be used on a vehicle continuously for 200,000 miles without replacement. For the system to operate efficiently, however, the engine has to be producing heat as well. Units that idle for a great deal of time or units that are used very little may have difficulty maintaining enough heat in the system to burn out this ash. So a system was developed that would actually inject fuel into the head of this assembly at the engine, and that when hitting the catalyst would create a tremendous amount of heat. This is what we call a regen. Most regens were performed automatically and performed very well. This particular component at the rear of the exhaust pipe is used in conjunction with that to reduce the chance of someone inadvertently being burned at the rear of the bus. This device blends, deflects, and moderates the temperature of the exhaust, which may be in excess of 1,000 degrees, at least 300 degrees before it actually hits the environment. This is a very simple device, but very important device. You'll also notice that we've moved the exhaust outlet from the right rear corner to the left rear corner of the vehicle. This is a sheet that was provided with a lot of vehicles which showed all the lamps that we've added to the system. We've already discussed 3 of these, the check, stop, and the malfunction indicator lamp. These lamps on the dash, the remaining lamps, we have one here which is called the hot exhaust system temperature lamp. This lamp comes on when the vehicle achieves 900 degree exhaust temperature and the vehicle is also moving at less than 5 miles an hour. This is a normal indicator. There is nothing wrong with the vehicle. This is not a fault code. This is actually advising the driver that that rear corner is hot and all efforts should be made to keep people away from it. Unlike the DPF lamp, which is the diesel particulate filter, this comes on when the system is not capable of maintaining enough heat and the filter is becoming clogged. This means that regeneration is necessary. The first step in regeneration, however, is to actually just put the engine to work. We will typically recommend you just drive the vehicle a little harder, and quite often that is sufficient to build enough heat that that lamp will go off. If, however, this lamp starts to flash, it's an indication that we've got to let someone know, got to let the technicians in your maintenance department know, and they have to do what's called a regeneration. The third lamp we've discussed briefly is the malfunction indicator lamp. This lamp is not a nice lamp. This has to do with the Environmental Protection Agency, has to do with the emission controls on the system, and when this lamp comes on, we need to call transportation, advise them this lamp is present. Stationary regen lamp. For your information only, this is located on the dash, and this is the switch which our technicians, your technicians, would be using to regen the engines. This is not a switch which you want to use or attempt to use. It is strictly for your technicians. The malfunction indicator lamp. This lamp is tied to EPA and our emission requirements on the engine. The EPA requires that whenever anything occurs which is contrary to the emission control system and the way it's supposed to be operated, this lamp will function. One of the problems that we have recently found is that the driver can inadvertently cause this to occur by themselves. The startup procedure on today's engines require that we suppress the white smoke that you'll all remember used to issue out of these engines when they first started them on cold days. We do this by turning on literally a heater inside the engine block, which preheats the intake portion, allowing the fuel to burn efficiently on startup. Along with this, there is a lamp on the dash which currently says, "Wait to start." If you do not wait for this light to go off, or you cycle the ignition switch to the start position before the dash fully initiates, meaning all the lamps have flashed, all the hands have moved back and forth, we will cause a malfunction indicator lamp to occur. Please let the dash tell you when to hit the ignition. The after-treatment system in 2010 became more sophisticated. We still had the diesel particulate filter from 2007 shown in the lower right-hand corner, but we added quite a few additional components. This added what they called selective catalytic reduction and uses a fluid called DEF, or diesel exhaust fluid. There are quite a few pieces underneath the bus which pertain to this. There's a processor underneath the step well, there's a pump, there's an additional tank just ahead of the entry door, there's another unit after the diesel particulate filter, and what's called a doser assembly. Now, all outside of the vehicle is an additional door by the entry door that says diesel exhaust fluid, and there's a warning there not to put diesel fuel in this. DEF, or diesel exhaust fluid, is available in many different quantities, and there's been quite a bit of discussion about DEF. This is basically 2/3 water, along with a nitrogen-rich material which is high in ammonia. This mixes with the exhaust and renders the NOx in our exhaust almost completely gone. This is an extremely effective system. But this is not a driver responsibility. The DEF tank should be filled by the technicians at your facility, not by you. Ultra-low sulfur. I wanted to include some material safety data sheets in here just so you appreciate some of the fluids you do see in your vehicles. Ultra-low sulfur is what we're currently using in all on-highway diesel engines. This has a minor health standard of 1, which shows minor irritation. It is a somewhat large or moderate fire hazard. Reactivity is normally stable even under fire exposure. And specifically, they do recommend gloves with cuffs, goggles, face mask if you're doing a lot of this. Another fluid which is very common around vehicles is windshield washer fluid with antifreeze. And you'll typically see a jug of this floating around the back of your car, and we don't think of it as very much of a hazard. It's actually much more hazardous than ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel. The health hazard is a 3 versus a 1. The higher the number, the worse. The fire hazard is higher again than diesel fuel. Reactivity is normally stable, but they're actually recommending eye wash stations and safety showers in areas where they're using a lot of this fluid. Exhaust fluid has a minor health hazard to it. It can cause minor skin irritation. Basically just wash it off. It will not burn. You could actually put a fire out with it. Reactivity is very, very stable. It actually is quite biodegradable. EPA's requirements on this is if we have a spill, a large spill, to soak it up. If we have a small spill, hose it off. And the only specific function they're asking here is that rubber gloves might be suggested. Some people may be sensitive to it on their skin. It's basically 32.5% urea, which is a nitrogen-based fertilizer. It'll operate in any temperature. We only need to fill this as it needs to, and this is handled by your technicians. And the shelf life on this material is about 2 years in our environment. The impact that this SCR system, this 2010 emission standards, has on you as a driver is really not very much. Number one, a full tank there typically would go to around 3,500 miles before you needed to refill. We only recommend you monitor and refill as necessary. The tank is heated. It is 2/3 water and would freeze, but we have a heating system in there which keeps it stable and keeps it in operating condition. And one thing you may notice on shutdown is this: you will hear the pump underneath the step well operating after you shut off the vehicle. What this is actually doing is purging the system dry so that there's no chance of a freeze damage inside the pump or lines themselves. The DEF gauge is part of the fuel gauge. Just above the DEF area, which is a series of LEDs, there is a low DEF light. This light will come on in certain conditions. Now, one other thing on the dash now has the ability to read outside air temperature and will give you an ice warning when you're in the mid-30s. It's something to keep aware of. This is nothing that it should be a problem for you. What if you run out of DEF? Well, as the tank depletes at different levels, that low DEF light that we spoke of earlier will come on at 10%. At 5% of a tank, it'll start flashing. Now at 2.5%, it'll actually start to derate the engine. Again, the EPA wants you to be aware of the fact that you are close to an emission concern, and one way they do that is by reducing the horsepower of the unit. At empty, you will also get a check engine light, the yellow engine-looking thing, and an additional derate by 40%. Now here's where I have to advise some caution. If you get this situation and are not near home and have no way of refilling this tank, do not turn it off. Because after the engine has been shut down, you will get a red stop engine light, an MIL lamp, and the vehicle will be limited to 5 miles an hour. If you have a check engine on, along with low DEF, do not turn the engine off till you're back to the garage. Once you refill the system and the pump resumes pressure, the MIL lamp, in this case, one of the few, will actually deactivate. If another liquid is used in place of DEF, someone's put the wrong fluid in the DEF tank, this would be detected by the NOx sensors on the engine very, very quickly. There would be an immediate check engine light and MIL lamp, and you would see a reduction in torque very quickly. The first hour you'd be reduced by 25%, the second hour additional up to 40%. After 3 hours, and after the engine has been shut down, the stop engine lamp would come on, and the vehicle would also be limited to 5 miles an hour. This is not a good situation. There has been a good deal of damage to the engine and equipment because of this, and the only way to repair this is this has to go into an authorized service outlet and for repairs and deactivation. Well, I hope this has helped you understand the operation of the bus a bit better. If there are any questions, please call Matthews Buses, and we'll be happy to help. Thank you.